Have you ever felt like what you actually want in life has these words associated with it? When you think of it, you think of heavy, difficult, long, hard, stressful, failure, no more fun, right? And for a long time, these were the things that I unconsciously, out of my awareness, believed about the things I wanted out of life, right? Take just even making a YouTube video right now, right? I remember prior to the awareness I have now, I had these underlying assumptions about needing to make sure that everything is cleanly done and perfectly poised and angled, and I need to make sure my hair is a particular way and all the things, right? Right. That might be more someone else, but she knows herself. My point is that there were all these barriers I think I needed to check mark off before I was ready, right? I was in what was called a force state, where everything had to be grind, right? Hustle. Discipline. More or less, I was behaving like somebody that didn't actually want what they said they wanted very much, right? Because I had to ask myself, if I wanted this thing as much as I said, why is it so hard for me to take action on it? Right? If I wanted this thing as much as I say I want it, why is it so hard for me to take action of it? If my head was saying one thing and my heart was saying one thing, why are my hands not following? Why are my hands and my head at odds? And that was an important question to answer, because if I was going to have the things that I knew I deserved in life, if I was not going to be one of those people who just observed other people exist and live life, I had to figure out that question. And so I go online and, I try the affirmations, right? Listen to affirmations as we go to bed, which have their use case. But I'm going to show you why that'll never work long term. And then I try to listen to books and courses, right? Self-development or self-help. And then the psychology, which is more my background in terms of schooling. But even that wasn't that powerful, not for permanent, fast change. It was useful for certain things in certain cases, but if we wanted permanent, fast change, which I wanted to be in a flow state. I did not want just a little bit of, hey, let's just reframe it positively. And I wanted permanent change where when I go to do what I needed to do with my hands, it was effortless. And fortunately, I've been able to obtain that state. And to be honest with you guys, I actually didn't even realize that happened. Right? I was talking to, several different people, and I could notice that I remember that. I remember when that used to be a lot of force. I remember when that used to, and I completely had forgotten that my entire life, right? Except for things that I was doing that was new, but then I used the technology that I'm about to share with you guys, and immediately I was in a flow state within minutes, and it would never go away. But the thing is, I'd forget that I used to struggle with it because the struggle didn't last very long, and I'd shift to flow state, and I'd achieve flow state success in that area, whether it be women, whether it be fitness, whether it be, I'm doing YouTube right now. Man, I used to be like, I'm procrastinating on the videos and all the things. But I knew if I wanted to change anything in my life, I had to be consistent. And if I wanted to be consistent, I had to consistently do what I said I would do when I said I would do it, with the level of excitement that I would need to have if I'm going to do something all the time. So I'm like, okay, well, affirmations don't last. Self-help has its benefits, but beyond a certain point, it still feels like a grind. Therapy, the motivational videos, the accountability groups, all those things were outside of me. But the problem is they didn't change how I felt inside. So it always felt like work. It always felt like work, and I didn't want work to feel like work. I wanted work to feel like fun. I wanted to love what I did because it's such a big percentage of my day. So I'm like, okay, something needs to change. So I'm about to share with you guys what the real problem was, right? So you can never need to hustle grind again for the rest of your life. I know that's a crazy claim, but you're going to see why that's the case. Very logical. And so let's think about what we actually want. These two words right here. We want change. We want control. We want clarity. We want change. So I want to, let's do something simple. Have a six-pack. Right. Right. So if I want to have a six-pack, that's because in this moment I don't have one. We don't desire what we have. We desire what we lack. So I don't have one yet. Right. Oops. So I'm like, okay, I want a six-pack. The next thing was that I need to get clarity. This is usually what we call knowledge, right? How do I get a six-pack? And then you may figure that out, watch a video or something. But then this is the part that's hard. We have to become it. We have to become the person with the six-pack. And the thing with the person with the six-pack is they interact with the world in a certain way because what we interact with regularly is our identity. Really, really let that sit in. What we interact with regularly is our identity. So if I wanted to become somebody with a six-pack, I have to interact with the gym in a specific way. I have to interact with my food in a specific way. I have to interact with water, alcohol. I have to interact with the world in a new way that I didn't interact with the world before, right? Because interaction is identity. So let's say I try to interact with the gym equipment. Interact with the broccoli and chicken breasts so I can get my body fat percentage down. The question is, can I control myself long enough to stay consistent with that? Could I control myself long enough to stay consistent with all the steps required? Right? I have the desire for change, I have the clarity, but I lack the control. And if I lack the control, what's going to lead to is inconsistency. The question is, why am I inconsistent? Right? That's the problem we all have. We're either consistent and it feels so difficult to maintain it, so much so that we burn out and we go to this cycle of we try, we go good for a couple weeks, maybe even a couple months. We fall off. In that fall off, we lose trust for ourselves. And then over time, we go, okay, I'm going to try again. But the memory of the failure from last time is coming into the next time. And so we try and try and try. And then we fall off again. It's like, damn it, what the hell? Okay, I'm going to lock in for real this time. And we try again and we fall off. But each time our brains are coding in the memory of the failure, right? And so we're developing an identity as somebody who, whenever they make the effort, can't sustain. Whenever they make the effort, they can't sustain. When they can't sustain, shame. I'm broken. Maybe I'm just not good enough. Maybe this is just not for me, right? And so now we get a situation where this gets put in place. Effort equals failure. Effort equals failure. failure equals shame, embarrassment. You get the idea. I'll spell it out. Failure equals shame and embarrassment. Shame, I'm going to put S and E to shorten it. Shame and E equals loss of status. Loss of status equals death in identity. And so effort, doing the psychological math, effort equals death. That's the code that's running underneath. Effort equals death of identity. And back in the day, our social, and still today, right? You know, our families, we don't want to let our families down. If we have any loved ones, you don't want to let, you know, your parents down potentially. You don't want to let, you know, your friend circle see that you're the one person behind the scenes that's not really getting it together. You feel like a failure. All these things, and we try to hide them, and it's like, everything is fine. Everything is fine. But behind closed doors, and I knew, things weren't what they seemed. And it's because of this. Because the only way we were going to change was through effort. But then effort feels so heavy. But the reason it feels heavy is because somewhere along the line we linked effort in this area to identity death, loss of status, rejection. Nobody's going to love us, right? And so how do we fix that? Once that code is logged in there, no matter what we do, it'll feel like a force state. And force states are necessary because we still can use our willpower to get things done, but it always leads to burnout in the end. It always leads to negative emotions and unpleasant life. And then we ask ourselves, man, if it's going to be all this every time I need to do what I need to do, then when I get to where I need to go, right? If I wanted to be the best salesperson on my sales team, then I'd have to do all the grinding to get the work in. And then when I actually get to the top, I'm going to have to grind to stay there. Man, I'm leaving this job. I'm going to put in the least amount of effort. I'm going to, I'm not going to stay here. This is hell on earth. So force state always leads to inconsistency. And inconsistency equals a lack of self-trust. And a lack of self-trust leads to feeling worthless. If you don't trust you, think about how you treat somebody you don't trust. Think about that. Think about somebody you don't trust. That if I left you in a room with them, your body would respond, I don't trust this person. Imagine being forced to be in a room with somebody like that, and you can't get away from them. That's what it's like living with low self-trust. You're in the room with somebody you can't stand, that disgusts you. But the problem is, it's you, and you can't get away. So how do we fix that, right? Because that's no state anybody should live in. We fix that by recognizing there's nothing wrong with you and realizing what you're doing right now is protecting yourself. You're protecting yourself. You're not broken. And so how the brain does it is that it has two modes. It has what's called a regulator, and this is responsible for keeping you safe. And we got the simulator, which is responsible for exploration. So when you have a new idea, you have a new thing you saw on Instagram or YouTube, a new opportunity, your regulator has to give you permission, because you must remain alive in order to succeed. So if you die, there's no point in succeeding. So the regulator determines what's safe. But remember what we talked about earlier. If you are used to a force state, then action always leads to inconsistency. And inconsistency leads to a lack of self-trust, which is painful. Pain. So now the force state, which is action now leads to pain. Action equals pain. And when that gets coded, when you try to do something new, action equals pain. New action equals pain. Action will lead to pain. You get procrastination, you get overthinking, you get all these things that seem to be like, why can't I just, you get that tightness in your chest, and you get, I'm going to do it this time, but then you don't do it, and then stuck in this cycle. Stuck in the cycle. And people look at you and think, this person doesn't want it bad enough. That's not true. This person isn't serious. That's not true. This person isn't very ambitious. That's not true. This person is lazy. That's not true. This person has a nervous system protecting them like no others protected them before. And until we find out what exactly you're being protected from, these are called your neurocodes. And neurocode just means, think of it like the instructions. I know how to explain it. Think of your neurocode like an automatic, what can I say? Automatic, there we go. Automatic protection system. So an example of a neurocode would be if I'm really trained in martial arts and somebody went and I just automatically grabbed their hand. I have an automatic neurocode for when somebody swings, block, right? Similarly, we have neurocodes for if an opportunity comes that's uncertain, that I don't know if I can do, block. And so until that's learned, until that's removed and reinstalled with a different one, you can never achieve the flow state of success. Flow state success will be inaccessible to you. It will always feel like force, discipline, grind, get another one, grab another call. And of course you can do it. You're capable. You've done it before. However, it's a miserable life. It's a miserable life. And that's unfortunately the only option that you see online. That, or you need to, express your emotions infinitely. The problem is that doesn't bring you to flow state, right? It may make the force less, but it doesn't activate flow. Flow has a specific formula to it. I'm going to share it with you and then I can wrap it up there. If you want to achieve a flow state of success, right, where it's effortless. Right, I remember when I was getting into my fitness journey, I was watching a lot of David Goggins at the time. This is when he was very popular, just kind of coming out. And I was the guy that we just described, right? Okay, in the gym, do the thing, boom, boom, but not really at the level that I knew I should be, right? I remember stumbling on a David Goggins interview with Tom Billy at the time, way back in the day. And Goggins is talking about running miles, pooping his pants, all the things, right? That's how hard he was running. That's how much he didn't give up. And there's something to be said for that particular mode. It has its time and place. It's not that the willpower does not matter, right? Do not get this confused. Willpower matters. We have will for a reason. However, if the will is used so excessively, then an existence emerges that is forceful and awful and makes you question why you exist. Think about it. If getting up in the morning feels like heaviness, oh, I gotta go to this job. Especially again, if you're in sales, I gotta go get rejected by all these people. And then you go, and you're lonely, you're like, man, I gotta talk to these women. And then, and I gotta do that. Everything feels like I gotta do it. Of course, at a certain point, and this is the key, if reality feels like pain, then logically the simulation feels like relief. If reality feels like pain, the simulation feels like relief. And what's the simulation? The simulation is your mind generating imaginary scenarios. And I'm not talking about daydreaming. I'm talking about when you are not physically in this world, taking action and interacting with the thing you want to do. What does that mean? If I, instead of saying I'm going to get the six pack, I sit on my phone and I watch videos about other guys with six pack, and I'm writing on the workout, I'm doing the thing, I'm going to say, watching another YouTube video on the macros and the micros and the bioicros and all that, and I'm imagining, man, I'd be so jacked, man, I'd look like Tagoro from Yu Yu Hakusho. Right? And all the girls would love me. Man, they'd come running. And then the money would just be coming like it's nothing. Right? And I'd just be the man. I'd be him. So this is reality. This is a simulation. Right? And so the purpose, simulations are negative. The purpose of a simulation is to bring them into reality. But the problem is, if we're not careful and reality feels like pain because we're not experiencing flow state success, then reality becomes a simulation. Because now reality equals pain and the simulation equals escape. And that's rational. So you always default to the simulation until reality becomes flow state success, not force state success. Because the last thing you want is to lose trust for yourself again. So it's actually quite rational why people scroll on their phone all day, why they procrastinate all day, why they overthink, overplan, why we all do that. It's rational. It's not irrational. If anybody tells you that, they don't know what they're talking about. It is not irrational. However, it's not progressive. It's rational, but it's unprogressive. Right, I think that's the word, unprogressive. It's not going to get you where you want to go. And so the problem with that, you have a deadline on your opportunities. And if you keep going, I'm going to run the simulation and I'm going to plan. I'm planning to act. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to plan to act. I'm going to run the simulation before I act. Run the simulation, then act. Run the simulation, then act. The problem is you've never had a six pack. So you can't run a simulation on an action you've never done. You need to take the action, then do the analysis, then adapt based on what you learn, then try again, then run the analysis again, then adapt the information you learn, then try again. But it's not to go, I'm going to watch 1 million videos, and then when there's a certain point, I don't know when that point will be, then I'm going to start because I'm not ready. And now it's been, what, 2, 3 years? In the moment in history, you look up and like, well, I'll be damned, nothing has changed. can I measure in real life genuinely having any more? Should it have taken 3 years for me to get this six-pack? If I was 100% honest with myself. But it's actually logical what you're doing. So until you decode the neurocodes that are running you, right, the automatic protection, until those are revealed to you, the flow state will always be out of your reach. Because your brain is protecting you, the regulator is protecting you from failing again. They must be revealed. But once they are revealed, let me tell you something. In the space of a day, 2 days max, you'll be so effortless with the activity that you literally have forgotten you used to struggle with that. And that's what clients always describe. The number one thing I always hear when somebody goes through the flow state success system is that I forgot I used to do that. It's the number one thing people say. And the number one thing, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I used to do that. Why? Because protection, the protection system and the progression system are going in the same direction. Whereas, so that's flow, right? You could say they're flowing into each other. Flow state. Force state is when they're conflicting. You want to progress and you want to protect. And so you get this big X in the middle. And so you ain't going nowhere. You better go in that simulation. And so life shouldn't feel heavy. Success shouldn't feel heavy. So you want to learn more about how you can experience flow state success. We actually have something that's going on right now. It's going to be closing, I think, the end of the week. So whenever this goes out. And the link will be in the description down below. All right. This is going to teach you how to get flow state success as a regular thing in your life. So things don't feel as heavy as they usually do. Right? Talking to women feels effortless. So you don't have to look at another girl and wonder if you just let your wife go by. Right? Getting to the gym feels effortless. So you don't have to make another excuse to your friend, right, about why you didn't show up to the gym today. Or, lie to yourself about why you didn't show up to the gym today. Right? Finances. Right? We know it takes action for us to get what we want. Whatever that may be. But we know if we can't maintain it, then we can't obtain it. If we can't maintain it, we can't obtain it. And so until maintaining the discipline becomes effortless, then burnout is on the way. That much you can guarantee. And we've all been there before. And so nobody should go through life suffering with a lack of self-trust. And so if that's something you're interested in, click the link below, find out more. But if not, if there's nothing else you take from this video, you cannot obtain what you can't maintain. Because the moment you obtain it, you lose it. And if you lose it one more time, you're going to lose yourself. If you lose it one more time, you're going to lose yourself. Because that's going to be the final straw. I finally got what I said I wanted and I couldn't even sustain it. And all the work and grind it took me to get there. I'm going to have to do all that again. And that's usually where most men tap out of life. That's where most men tap out of life. And I remember being 17 and a friend of mine, I'll close with this. At the time, we used to have this joke where I said, I'm never going to be 17 in Snellville. Right? It's a city near where we live. And I'm never going to be 27 in Snellville. And what that represented, I believe we were 17 at the time, was that many times when we're young, we feel like that could never be me. I could never grow into being that guy, right? And for me at the time, the guy, 27 in Snellville, represented the guy who had big dreams coming out of school, had all these ideas, and at 27, he was living with his parents and nothing had changed. And it was still the same thing of, tomorrow, 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 tomorrow. Not realizing 7 years of his best years have already left. And I was like, I'll never be that guy. And so I did everything in my power to never let that happen. And what's crazy is that that same friend became 27 in Snellville. And we met up probably about a year ago. And bless his heart, but he lives here. And he lived here for 4 to 5 years of his 20s. To the point that when we met up, he said I was one of the first people he met up with in 4 or 5 years. And so this is a very dear to my heart point, because I know how bad this can get. And so if nothing else, there's a free identity exam that shows you your self-sabotage style, so that something can get started. Because trust and believe, you do not want to be 27 in Snellville and 37 in Snellville. And at 47 in Snellville, I don't know what to tell you. So it was good talking to you guys. Hopefully you got something from this, and I'll see you in the next video.